So welcome to Masechet Sanhedrin. It's not the first day, it's the third day, but glad to have everyone. Today's daf is daf Dalid, and we are up to the second wide line from the wide lines at the bottom of Gimel Amud Bet. So we're going to review some of what we did yesterday and the day before. That's it. That's the whole Masechet. But we, of course, start afresh. So it says the Gemara from the two dots. Let's get started. Tanu Rabbanan. The come and learn says the Braita Dinei Mamanot B'Shlosha. This is familiar to us from our Mishnah. If you have monetary judgments, you have a dispute about whether someone hurt someone else, whether the animal fell, etc., you have to have three judges to make that assessment. Rebbe adds in the Braita Hamisha. You actually need five judges, a whole new concept. You need to have five judges. Why? Kadesh Yigmor Hadin B'Shlosha. So that when you finish the din, you have three, meaning they might disagree. And if they disagree, some will say yes, some will say no. You need to have at least three against two. This is why do you need three against two? Atu bitlata milo gamar dina betray. Why can't you have three and then you'll have two at the gamar din, meaning you'll have two against one if they disagree. They could have three unanimous, but you could have two against one. If you just need a plurality, then why do you care if it's five or three? It says, no, you didn't understand what Rebbe was saying. Hachikama, we were at the fourth wide line. Said Rebbe, the reason you need five judges in a regular case of Dinei Mamanut is mipnei dig shigmar din bishlosha. You need to have three at the end of the din, meaning in order to have a judgment, you need to have three judges who say the same thing. So because Rebbe understands, we'll discuss this more, that you need three judges who say guilty, right? You can't have just three judges on a court because if they disagree, you only have two who say guilty. You'll need to have five so that if a majority say guilty, at least you have three that are in agreement about the psak. That's Rebbe's understanding. Alma kasavar. Now, what Rebbe therefore must hold, says the Gemara, is that tlata ki ktivi bigmar dina ktivi, right? We yesterday spent a lot of time learning where do you know three judges from, right? And we have Sukkim, it says Asher Yarshiyon Elohim, Ad Elohim Yavod Dvar Shnehem. It said the word Elohim three times, right? Or really two, and then we had a third. So we two, and then you had a third. So it seems that three judges that seem to be necessary, according to Rebbe, are necessary not when you start the din, but when you conclude the din. You need to have three judges who say whatever opinion you end up with. That's what the Gemara thinks. Says the Gemara, Migadef ba Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo was outraged by this. Migadef usually means a curse, right? So it's a word we don't use a lot in the Gemara, but he was outraged by this explanation. That's ridiculous, said Rabbi Avo. Elamiata, by that logic, Sanhedrin Gedola Tricha Meya Varbim ve'echad, right? A Sanhedrin, which the Torah says you need 71, should need 141 judges because you need to have 71 conclude something. When we say 71, if it means 71 on one opinion, you should need 141 judges, right? 141, so that you have 71 against 70 potentially. And you should have Sanhedrin Kitana, which we said in the Mishnah are 23, they should really need 45 people. Tricha Arba'im v'chamisha, they should really need 45. So you have 23 at one end. And says Gemara, no, you might say that must be the case. That might be the case, which clearly it's not. But it clearly can't be the case from the pasuk. Because if you recall the psukim that talked about Moshe establishing the Sanhedrin, Moshe gathers how many people with him? 70, right? Ella, it says, Asvuli shivim isham rachmana. Moshe says, I'm gathering 70 people, and himself is 71, right, as we said. But clearly you don't need 141. It must be that Mishat Asifa Shivim, that from the establishment of the court, you need 71 in this case. Or Shaftu Eida Vetila Eida Nami, when it says by capital cases, we learned out 23 from this. You need Shaftu Eida Vetila Eida, that's Mishat Shvita Ha'eda. From the time of judgment, you need 23. So Hachinami here too, if you need three judges, it doesn't mean three at the end, it means three in the beginning. V'nikrav Balabait El Elohim means Mishat Kreva Shlosha. From the moment you go to court, it needs to be a court of three. Ella, you're right. This was Rabbi Avo is correct. This whole explanation of Rebbe was wrong. There's no one who says that if you need three judges, it means you need three judges who say one opinion. The Rebbe has a whole different source for how he knows you need five judges. Ella says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, Hainu time of the Rebbe. The reason that Rebbe says that a regular case of Dinei Mamanut needs five is because when the pasuk says Asher Yarshiun Elohim, right? They will be judged they'll be decided or made guilty by the judges. Elohim here means the judges. It's plural, right? It says Yarshi'un in a plural sense with the Vav. So that makes it sound like there are two judges. So Trey, that implies that you were made guilty by them, which is at least two. And it says Elohim twice. Nemer Elohim lamata and Nemer Elohim lamala. It says you bring a person to the judges twice. So just like the one, malamata, just like the lower one, meaning this later one in the Torah, Asher Yashiyun Elohim is two, Shnayim. Af lamala Shnayim. So it means the first time when it says you go to the judges, it means Nikrav Bal Habayit Eloha Elohim, which is not a plural language. But we learn from here that also must be at least two judges. So you have 2 times 2, which is 4. And of course, you can't have an even number, because if you have an even number, you might have a mistrial, right? A locked judgment. Ein beitin shakul. You can't have a beitin that's equal. So Mosif and Alein Odechad, Harikan Chamisha. You add one more, and that's where you get to 5. So where yesterday we said it says Elohim, Elohim, which means 2, and we had to add a third. Rebbe says one of those Elohims is plural, and therefore at least 2. We learn from that one that the other one's also plural, and you have 4, and from 4 you go to 5. So that is what Rebbe holds. Why he holds it? Every case needs 5. Ask the Gemara, the first word now, Daf Daled Amud Aleph from the top, the Rabbanan. What do the Rabbanan say to this, who say you only need 3? They say, well, if you look at the Torah, although we read it Yarshi'un, it's written without a Vav, right? Yashi'an, let's say. It's written, judge him, not they judge. And therefore, even though it's read with the Vav, it's read plural, it's written singular. And so because it's written singular, we go after that writing. So it's 1 judge. And then it says a second time 1 judge. So that's 2. And you add a third, that's where they get 3. So the machloket here seems to be whether you darshan what's written, which is 1, minus singular, or what's read, which is plural. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan on the top line of Daf Daled, when this actually is a much deeper machloket. And there are 5 Tanaim, Rebbe and Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, weird name, an unusual name, Ubeit Shammai and Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Akiva, all 5 Tanaim in different contexts, Kulu Sfiralu, they all hold something called Yesh Aim Lemikra, that there is aim means more powerful, what we follow, the mother, the maternal, is Lemikra, is the way something is read. Meaning at times, we're going to discuss this all day today, don't worry. At times, the Torah, we often use something called a kriktiv, right? It's written a certain way, it's read a certain way. That there is power, meaning we darshan what's read, that's what yesh aim lemikra, as opposed to yesh aim lemisoret, which means that you follow what's written, what's the tradition, right? So all 5 of these Tanaim, Rebbe, we just gave the explanation. It says the word yarshi'an without a vav. We read it yarshi'un. Rebbe says darshan the vav, and it should be plural, the way you read it. So that's one example. Rebbe Hadam Maran.
Well, wait, you're saying at the end that, right? At the end of this, we said 2 and 2 is 5. He comes to 5, okay? Because you can't have a Beit Din Shakul. But we learned above, his opinion of certainly Rabbi Yehuda holds there could be 70. We didn't get to that yet. But there's also Rabbi Yoshia says that he says that you can have a Beit Din Shakul. We learned that above. And near the end of so there is an opinion that there can be a Beit Din. He said even 4 may be possible. So there are people that hold that could be a Beit Din Shakul.
Correct, but they're not these Tanaim though.
Okay, but to make it an absolute rule, I thought you were saying absolute. There are still those that hold it could be 4. I mean, we may have not come to the conclusion. It may take us a few weeks, but that does exist up to this point.
Correct, potentially, but not these Tanaim. Yes. So back to this question. This again, the concepts are really important. Whether you say yesh aim, which means again, aim here is used as we give weight to that which is written, which is mikra, misoret, which is what's written, or yesh aim the mikra, or it's what's read, how we read it, in the tradition. Now, of course, you can ask yourself, how do we know how to read the Torah if it's not, there's no nikudot, right? So there are, which there are not, right? So there are traditions, right? And obviously this is assuming that the tradition is unified and that everyone reads it a certain way. So we're going to get to a lot of examples today. Very fascinating. But let's get the other 4 Tanaim before we start critiquing them. Rebbe, we just said, says the word Yarshi'an without a Vav. We read it Yarshi'un with a Vav, and Rebbe said that's what's more powerful. You go after 2 judges. Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, what's this case? The Tanya. There was actually a Braita that describes Sha'alu Talmidim et Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz. The students asked Rabbi Yehuda ben Roy, it's a very interesting question. When we have a halacha, we're going to go throughout the whole Torah today, by the way. When we have a halacha about a woman who gives birth to a child, so it says that if she gives birth to a male child, she's tamei for 7 days, and then she has yemei tahara, where whatever she sees is not considered nida or ziva, for 33 days, right? And then she brings a korban and she comes to her husband. Then it says if you give birth to a female child, to a nikeva, then your tum'ah shivu'ayim. You're tamei for 2 weeks. But it doesn't say shivu'ayim with the vav. It says shivu'ayim without a vav. So maybe, said the students to Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, the woman is tamei for 70 days. Maybe you should read it shivim instead of shivu'ayim, which means 2 weeks. So the students asked Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, Akrani, why can't I read the verse to say shivim, right? Or let me say that again. It says you could read the word as shivim, not shivuayim, which is how we read it. Yachol, so you might think, ask the students, deheyoledet nikeva tme'ah shivim. Maybe a woman who gives birth to a female child is tamei 70 days. Amar lahen, so Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz said to his students, well, think about it. There is a pattern, right? Because she's tamei for certain days. There's yemei tuma and then yemei tahara. And by a male child, it says yemei tuma are 7. There's no debate about that. And yemei tahara are 33, right? She has 40 days total, 7 and 33. By a nikeva, it says you're tamei shivuayim, which we interpret to mean 2 weeks. They're asking if it can mean 70 days. And then your tahar, yemei tahara, go to 66 days. So obviously the parallel of 7 and 33 is 14 and 66, not 70 and 66. So said Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, Nemar Amar lahem tima v'tihar b'zachar. There's yemei tuma and yemei tahara by a male child. Tima v'tihar b'nikeva by a female child. Ma'akish tihar b'zachar b'nikeva kaflayim. Just like by the yemei tahara, 33 days by a male, or 66 days, double that by a female child. Afkish timei b'zachar b'nikeva kaflayim. So too, when it says by a male 7, a girl child must be 14, and that's why you read it shivuayim instead of reading it shivim. Great explanation. The students left and went to lunch. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz went after them. After they left, yatsa umachzir achareihem. Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz ran after them and said, no, I take it all back. Everything I told you, I have a new answer. Amar lahem iatem zekukim lekach. You don't need all this brilliant, analogy that I just gave you. Because shivuayim karinan. The way we read it, when you read the Torah, is shivuayim with that. There's a bunch of letters added here, right? A vav and a yud. But shivuayim meaning 2 weeks. The yesh aim lemikra. And what matters is the way you read it, not the way it's written. So even though it's written in a way that you could have read it or could read it as shivim, since as the Torah reading and as the tradition we read it, not that way, yesh aim lemikra. So that's a very clear explanation of a second person who holds that opinion. What's the third? Beit Shammai. It's not. We have a Mishnah of Beit Shammai. This is a Mishnah in Zvachim. Beit Shammai omrim, the following. Now, I'm going to give a very quick recap. We're going to get to this in a few months, maybe, not many months, a year maybe, in Kadshem, about karbanot, right? So most karbanot are brought on the Mizbeach. If you read Ezu Mekomam Shel Zvachim every morning, you know this. But basically, a karban ola and a shlamim, and probably an asham, we'll talk about ola and shlamim. The way they're brought on the Mizbeach is they're put on 2 sprinklings on the Mizbeach at each corner, opposite corners, so it gets to all 4 sides. It's called Shtayim Shehin Arba. Okay. A carbon, Torah just says put it on the corners. A carbon chata is put on each side of the mizbeach. So you put 4 different applications of blood. Now it's going to be important later in the daf. If you recall, carbon chata is done above the middle line, the chud hasikra. So it's done on the top part of the mizbeach. A carbon ola and shlamim are done on the lower part of the mizbeach. Lamata michud hasikra. Okay. So it says the Mishnah. Anything that's generally brought on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, meaning the regular Mizbeach, that you do just 1 matana on the Mizbeach, and then let's say the blood spills, you lose it, or you got to run away or something. There's a siren, I don't know. So either the 1 matana is enough, right? Your b'diavad, it's enough. L'chatchila, you're supposed to do 2 that are 4. But 1 is enough, says Beit Shammai. But if it's a carbon chatat, meaning not an asham, shlamim, or ola, then you have to have shtei matanot. You have to have a minimum of 2. You're supposed to have 4, but as long as you do 2, that's enough. And Beit Hillel omrim, af bechatat shneitza matana achat kiper. Even a chatat, 1 is b'diavad enough. So, okay, unrelated machloket. Beit Shammai says you're supposed to have 4, 2 is adequate. Beit Hillel says you're supposed to have 4. 1 is adequate. And says Rav Huna, Gemara Mizvachim, my time at the Beit Shammai, because if you follow the different psukim, there's different members, there are different chataot that are mentioned in the parsha in Vayikra. It says the word kranot on the corner. I'll put it al karnot hamizbeach 3 different times. Karnot, 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 and each one's plural, right? Harei kan sheish. So Torah is telling you to put the chatat on 6 different corners. Now it's not really one chatat; it's 3 different chataot, each one on the corners. But you darshan 6 corners. So arba mitzvah, 4 is ideal. You can't have more than 4 corners, right? You should put the chatat on 4 corners, and shtayim lakev. And if you can't do the 4, the minimum you need is 2. So that's the drasha. And Beit Hillel says, well, you don't. It's written without a vav 2 times. So kranot, plural, which is 2, and karnat, karnat, right? Of course, we read it kranot, but it's written without a vav. So that's only 4. 2 plus 1 plus 1. Harei kan arba'ah. So you only have 4. So I learned from there that shlosha mitzvah, which is of course not true. You really need 4 for the mitzvah, but 3 at least are applied to the mitzvah. V'achat lakev, and you only need a minimum of 1 in a b'diavad situation. Says Gemara, what? Maybe you mean 4 for the mitzvah. You don't need anything. And if you pour none of the blood, you get a kapara. Ve'ema kulu mitzvah. That maybe all 4 for a mitzvah. Says Gemara, well, it's impossible because kapara bichti lo ashkechan. You never get a kapara for nothing. No pain, no gain, right? If you don't put anything into it, there's no way to get a kapara. So it's true, right? Beit Hillel is a little awkward because really it should be 4 and 0, but we've darshan 3 and 1. But what you see from here, at least, is that it says the word without a vav, right? And it's read with the vav. And Beit Shammai says, well, it's read with the vav. Yesh aim lim mikra. What matters is how you read it. Beit Hillel seems to say it matters how it's written, but Beit Shammai says it matters how it's read. That's the third Tana.
How do you get from 6 to 2 though? I missed that. He says, no, but according to Beit Shammai, there's 6, right? Karnot, karnot, karnot.
6 is to tell you, 4 are ideal, and 2 are la'akev. So 4 are the lichatchila, and then if you don't do it the right way, well, then you need to do the last 2, basically. Rabbi Shimon, what's the 4th Tana? Titania. This is getting back to Masechet Sukkah. If you recall, how many walls do you have to have in a sukkah? So says the Mishnah, Shtayim gilchatan, you need to have 2 regular walls, and the 3rd wall, afilu tefach, shlishit afilu tefach, as everybody knows. And Rabbi Shimon argues, Rabbi Shimon Omer, no, you need 4 walls in your sukkah. Shalosh gilchatan, 3 regular walls, and revi'it afilu tefach, the 4th could be a small one, only a tefach. And that's a halacha l'Moshe Misina. Now, b'maika mifagi, what do they argue about? Because Rabbanan Savri, this is an explanation of the Braita. Yesh aim the Masoret, that it depends on how it's read, how it's written. Keep confusing that. And Rabbi Shimon Savri, Yesh aim the Mikra, right? Let's explain it. Rabbanan Savri, Yesh aim the Masoret, because if you look at the pasuk says Basukot Teshvu Ki Yashafti Basukot. 3 psukim. 1 is written with the vav, and 2 are written without a vav. Right? It says, and I'll read sort of how you would imagine reading it. Basukat, basukat, basukot. Now, we don't read any of it that way. We read sukkot, 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 right? So you read it plural. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. It's written 1 plus 1 plus 2, which is 4. So hareikan arba'ah, according to the Chachamim. Now, you have to have, say the Chachamim, dal chad kol legufe. One pasuk is there to tell you not how many walls, but that you need to have a sukkah, right? Because we don't know anything about a sukkah until this pasuk. So one pasuk is the essential pasuk. You're left with 2 psukim, pashlu tlat. You have 3 left over, right? So the first pasuk is essential, let's just say. The next pasuk is 1. The next pasuk is 2. So you got 3 words sukkot. So you need to have 3 walls. Pashlu tlat. Now the halacha Moshe Sinai comes and says, well, one of them could be a fake wall, could be a small wall. Atai hilchata, the halacha Moshe Sinai comes and garata l'shlishit. It shrinks the 3rd wall. V'ukimta tefach. It makes it only a tefach. So you need 2 regular plus a 3rd wall that's a tefach. And Rabbi Shimon Savar, the first wide line now, that you read it bisukot, and therefore you darshan it that way. So basukot, 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 which is plural each time. Harekan sheish. Now, dal chad kol legufe, erase 1 pasuk to tell you that you need to build a sukkah. So you got 2 psukim left, but they're 2 times 2, which is 4. Pashalu arba'ah, you got 4 words sukkah. Atay yochata, so now the halacha Moshe Missinai comes and garata the revi'it and shrinks the 4th wall, v'ukmei atefach, and leaves it at a tefach, and therefore you need 3 plus 1. So that's the 4th Tana. And the 5th Tana, 4 lines from the bottom, is Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer, another really, again, it's really every Seder and Shas I think we're getting to, except for Zerayim. Rabbi Akiva's halacha is a halacha that is not going to be very familiar to us because we don't end up learning a lot of kudshim, a lot of tarot. I'm sorry, unless Charlie learns that. I don't know if you do, Charlie, but the halacha is that a dead body is mitamei be'ohel, right? Touching it, but also ohel. No, you didn't get to ohelot yet? Okay, it's coming. So we've learned this halachot, but a dead body is mitamei be'ohel. Now there's a whole discussion in Masechet Ohelot, a very lengthy discussion in the Mishnah, which I've learned, about how much of a body is considered to be a dead body, right? So a revi'it, a tefach, a bone. We've talked about different details throughout Shas, right? Etzem kisa'ora, right? We've had all these different details. One of the measurements is blood. So blood from a person who dies is considered to be part of them. Now, this is not blood from before they die, right? If a person is alive and you take away their blood, that's not considered to be mate, right? It might be tamei, but it's not considered to be tamei mate. But if a person dies and then blood comes out of their body, that blood is considered to be part of their dead body. And if they have a revi'it of dam, then it's mitamei be'ohel, meaning if the person dies and they move the body, but there's a revi'it of dam left behind on the carpet, the whole house is mitamei be'ohel, okay? The question is, what if the revi'it hadam comes from two bodies? What if there's half from one person and half from another? Are they mitzdaref? Okay, very esoteric question. But says Rabbi Akiva, the Tanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer, minayin the revi'it dam sheyatza mishtei metim shemitamei be'ohel. How do you know that if you get together a revi'it of blood that comes from two different bodies or five different bodies, that it's mitamei be'ohel? Shenemar, because the pasuk says, interesting pasuk, al kol nafshot meit lo yavo. Don't come into the presence of nafshot meit, which is a very weird term anyways. Literally means the life of dead people. But it says the word not nefesh meit, but nafshot meit. So it's plural. Right? And so because of that, because you read it that way, it's not written that way, but because you read it that way, nafshot, it is shtei nefashot v'shir echad. You can have two people, dead people, right? Two corpses leading to one shir. And the Rabbanan disagree, and they say nafshat ktiv, that if you look at the way it's written in the Torah, although we do read it, I'll call nafshot mate, there's no vav. And since there's no vav, it's every soul. So it has to be one soul for one size. And if you don't have a revi'it from each person, then it's not mitamei be'ohel. So clearly, Rabbi Akiva goes after how you read it, and the Chachamim don't. So there are 5 opinions from throughout Shas about yesh aim lemikra, and one of them is ours about how many people you need in a big team.
Okay. In the case of the sukkah, don't we follow the Rabbanan that it is 2 walls plus a part of a third?
We do, but why are you surprised by that?
No, I'm not surprised, but that if most of the people hold yesh aim lemikra, in that case, it's yesh aim lemasoret.
Right. No, I don't think there's anyone who says yesh aim. I mean, everything we've just quoted seems to be not lahalacha, right? We don't pass like Rabbi that you need 5 judges. We don't pass like Beit Shammai about anything, of course, right? We don't paskin, or not anything, but most things, right? We don't paskin. I'm not sure how we paskin about the karbanot, but yeah, no, most of these opinions seem to be against the halacha. But there are 5 different Tanaim throughout Shas who quote an opinion that supports this.
But we tend to hold. Doesn't everyone hold in the end? Kuli alma yesh aim lemikra.
Not what we've read so far, but we're not there yet. We're not at the end, so let's keep going. Matkifla Rav Acha bar Yaakov asked Rav Acha bar Yaakov sort of your question. Mi ika deletele yesh aim lemikra. Can you say that anybody is of the opinion that you don't care primarily about how something is read, right? Vatanya, what about the pasuk that says lo tevashel gedi b'chalav imo, right? Which we say don't cook a gedi in the milk of its mother. But it doesn't, the word chet lamed vav can mean a whole different word. It could be chelev. Chelev means fat of its mother, right? Which would be a very different halacha, right? It'll be that you can't put the fats on it, but you can have your cheeseburgers all day long. So ask Tanya, what about the Braita, which says, and the Rashi here gives you, my Rashi has nikudot, right? Bichelev imo, which is not really how we pronounce it, meaning bichalav imo is really how is what it should say, right? The milk of its mother. Yachol bichelev, you might think that it means not the milk of the mother, but the fat of the mother, and milk would not be a problem, right? So Amr says the Braita, turn the page to Daf Dalan Mabet, yesh aim lemikra. It matters how you read it. The way we read it is lo tevashel gedi b'chalav imo, right? You can't cook gedi in the milk of its mother. So since we read it that way, although the pasuk's ambiguous, you could read the pasuk 2 different ways, you're not allowed to have a cheeseburger. So everybody, we really have not encountered any Tana anywhere who says, go ahead and eat the milk and meat together, right? So clearly, everybody gives precedence to the way you read it. So says the Gemara, well, okay, take everything back we just said Amud Aleph, forget it all. We'll have a new interpretation of every argument. Okay, let's go for it. Rebbe Rabbanan, the Hakamifki, Rebbe and Rabbanan, who we started today with, whether you need 3 judges or 5 judges. You know what they're arguing about? Rebbe Savar, that Yarshiun Elohim Achrini, that when it says Ashir Yarshiun Elohim, it says the word Elohim, it's another set of judges. So you have to Ad Elohim Yavod Var Shneim, go to the court, and then it says Ashir Yarshiun Elohim mean more judges. So you add 2 more, right? And the Rabbanan say that's ridiculous. It's saying the same judges you went to already. Right, Yarshiyun Deich, it means the ones you went to before. I'm gonna take out the word Vahai. Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, what's the case in Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz? There was no argument, right? Lo pligi Rabbanan aleh. That remember the case the students came in and said, how do you know that a woman is tamei for 14 days and not 70 days? He just gave an explanation. There's no other opinion. So everyone there agrees with Yesh Eim Lemikra. That's how you read it. What about the third case? What about where am I? Beit Hillel. Right? Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, the Tanya, there's another Braita that goes through this and from a whole different perspective. And this Braita says that that if you look at the psukim about a chatat, it says the word v'chiper, a love, right? You will have a kapara for him 3 times. Chiper, v'chiper, v'chiper. It says the word chiper 3 times by 3 different chatot. Rashi quotes which they are: the seir nasi, the seira v'yachid, and the kivsa v'yachid. Okay, these 3 different karbonot chatat. It says the word v'chiper. And you know why, says the Braita? Mipnei hadin. It's because you would have misunderstood the Torah based on not a kavachomer, but a limud, based on a derivation that we make. Because you would have read the Torah and said, V'halo dinu. You would have said, I logically have an understanding that nemar damim lamata, v'nemar damim lamala. It says to sprinkle the blood lower down, and it says it above. Rashi has 3 explanations of this. The one he likes, which I'm going to quote, I'm going to tell, is that it says blood below the chut hasikra, meaning the Ola and the Shlamim, and it says to sprinkle blood above, meaning the Karban Chata, right? So you would think, let's compare those different groups of Karbanot. Ma damim hamrum lamata, just like the blood that has to be done below, meaning the Ola and the Asham and the Shlamim, natnam b'matna achat kiper, that if you're in a sticky situation or you literally drop the blood or whatever, and you only put 1 application on the Mizbech, that's enough b'diavad. Af damim hamurim lemalan, so too blood that's done above the chut hasikra, meaning the karban chatat, shenatnam b'matana achat kiper. You would have thought that 1 is enough, which remember Beit Hillel said, Beit Shammai disagreed and said you needed 2. Oh, while you're sitting here thinking about this in the Beit Midrash, you would say klach the derech zu. Maybe we should lean a different way. There's another way to look at that, which is nemar damim b'chutz. It says bringing a karban chatat outside of the Beit Hamikdash, and outside meaning outside of the kodesh, outside of in the azara on the main mizbeach, right? The regular karban which is brought on the main mizbeach, that's chutz. But nemar damim b'fnim. But if you recall, there's several karbanot chatat that are brought b'fnim. They're very unusual ones, right? Which is the karban chatat of a what's his name, a kohen gadol, right? Who does a sin, a nasi yachata. Sorry, so a karban of a nasi, and not a karban gadol, karban of nasi and a karban of the parhelim davar shel tzibor, right, where they forget something and they bring it into bifnim, right? So no, I take it all back. I was right the first time. The par of the kohen Mashiach, the kohen gadol, and the parhelim davar shel tzibor are done bifnim, not the nasi. The seira and nasi is not. So, anyways, those 2 are brought bifnim, which the Torah describes. You go into the azara, you go into the kodesh. You sprinkle them on the parochet, right? 7 times. You put them on each corner, 4 corners of the mizbech, not the parochet. You put them on the mizbech 7 times, and you put them on each corner, right? Similar to Yom Kippur. So, ma damim amurim bifnim, just like when we talk about bringing blood for the karban chatat that's done inside, chisar achat mimatanot lo asav lo klum. If you miss 1, you're out of luck. You didn't do anything. And again, we learned this all in Kachim, Zvachim. We'll get to this one day. But we know that every single application is ma'akev. So you might have thought, so too when you have to bring blood on a karban chatas that's done outside, if you miss 1, you're done, 4 or nothing, right? So
you don't do a karban chatat outside though; it's inside.
Outside the kodesh in Nazara. Yeah, that's what chutz means. Chutz means outside of the kodesh, right? So on the main mizbeach, it's called outside. So nira lemid domeh. Says Gemara, well, let's see which one it's more comparable to. Danin chutz michutz. Well, we should compare one karban that's done on the main mizbeach, which is chutz, to another one. So compare the chata to the ola. Oh, vein danin chutz bifnim. Don't compare it to one that's done inside, which is obviously a much stricter and more unusual halacha. Oh, klach derech zur. Look the other way. Maybe danin chatat v'arba kranot michatat v'arba kranot. right? The one inside is also a karban chatat, and also supposed to be bought on 4 corners. Remember the ola, you don't even bring on 4 corners. You only do 2 that are 4. So don't come and bring me a karban ola or shlamim shein chatat ve'arba kranot. It's not a chatat. It's not brought on 4 corners. So you really, if you had just stopped here, you might have really thought that the karban chatat is completely ma'akev. You need all 4, not question of 2 or 1, which is what Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagreed about. You would need all 4. Therefore, Talmud Lomar, therefore the Torah comes to say, no, we're going to give you a little bit of a break. V'chiper, you're going to get a kapara even if you don't do it ideally. And it says it 3 times. Chiper, v'chiper, v'chiper, mipnei adin. So kiper, one of them is to tell you afabish lo natan el shlosha. Even though you missed one of them, you only did 3. The second one, kiper afabish lo natan el shtayim. And the third one, kiper afabish lo natan el achat. So according to Beit Hillel, the reason that you can get away with 1 is not because yesh aim le'misoret. It's because everyone agrees yesh aim le'mikra. But there's another pasuk that comes to tell you chiper v'chiper v'chiper that you get 3 extra shots, right? 4 minus 3, and you can get away with only 1. So that is the fourth case. And Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbanan about the sukkah, the hapligi. That, actually that's a whole different question. Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbanan, again, the Torah says besukot teshvu. We read it sukkot, so it's 6. Right? 3 psukim times 2. The question, though, is Rabbi Shimon Savar. So remember, everyone, if you remember what Rabbi Shimon said was, take out 1 pasuk legufe, you're left with 4, right? You need 4 walls. And the Chachamim said you only need 3 walls. So why do they disagree? Because Rabbi Shimon Savar schacha lo ba'ikra, right? 4 walls mean 4 walls around the outside. But remember, a sukkah really has 5 walls because there's 1 on top. And according to the Rabbanan, schacha ba'ikra, you need to have one of the walls, quote unquote, is the schach. So when it's true, everyone agrees that there's 4, right? Meaning there's 6 minus 1, so there's 4, right? 4 psukim. But according to the Chachamim, 4 psukim means 4 walls. Means 1 roof and then 3 walls, which is 3 minus 1. 2 plus a little bit. According to Rabbi Shimon, the schach is totally separate. You don't have a pasuk for that for whatever reason, and you have 4, which means 3 plus a little bit more. And the last one is Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan, right? Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan, we said, argue about whether the word nafshot mate is plural, but that's not the case. Rabbi Akiva savar nafshot tarti mashma. And the Rabbanan savi, that's true, we read nafshot, but we're talking about people, right? It's not many bodies, it's many times this happens, right? The alma mashma, meaning generally it's a lot of people. So that's how we understand now. Says the Gemara, is that really true? Now you're telling me that everybody agrees that the way you read something is the most important thing. But what about the following Braita? Hatanya, there's another Braita which talks about, again, we're really getting through everything, which is how do you know that when you have tefillin on the Rosh, we have 4 sections in our tefillin, everyone knows, right? 4 parshiot in the tefillin. We're getting nods. We'll get to Masechet Menachot where we discuss that in detail too. But there are 4 sections in the tefillin. How do you know that? Because it says the word totafot. Charlie agrees. Totafot 3 times. There's 3 psukim about tefillin. 1 in Shmot, and then of course Shema and V'hayim Shemoah, right? So there's 3 psukim that talk about totafot beineinecha, right? You put your totafot, and so it says totafot, totafot, totafot. Harekan. Now, if you read it, 1 is written with the vav, and 2 are written without a vav. So the 2 without a vav are singular, totafot, which means I guess a box, and then plural boxes or containers. So Harikan Arba'a, different Rabbi Yishmael. Says Rabbi Yishmael, that's how you know you need 4. Rabbi Akiva says, no, I disagree with that. Because you don't need a pasuk to tell me 4, because the word totafot means 4. Because the word tat in Kitbi, in the language Kitbi, which Miriam's going to tell us what language it is shtayim, and tat and pat ba'afriki, which might be some African language, is shtayim, right? So I don't know what either of these are, to be very honest, but okay, I'm sure no one knows, but anyways. So Rabbi Akiva says the word totafot in some foreign language means 4. Now, I don't get it. If the Torah says totafot plural and you read it with 2, then why do you need 6 boxes in your tefillin, right? If yesh aim le mikra, then why everyone here seems to disagree with yesh aim le mikra. Ella, says the Gemara, it's truth is the olam pligi. The reality is that there is a machloket, right? But however, the machloket is only in a case where there's a difference between the way it's written and the way it's read. So if you read it, if you look at how it's written, it says, say, Sukkot without a vav, then it's 1. You read it with the vav. But if you think of the word chelev and chalav, there's no difference, right? It's written the same way. So then, if you read it a certain way, that's the way you darshan. Ella says, they only argue if there's a difference, a clear difference between the kra, what's read, and what's written, misoret. Aval hai chelev v'chalav when it's the same, right? There's no difference in the way it's written. If you say the word milk or the word fat, yesh aim lemikra. So then everybody agrees that what matters is the way you read it, and therefore no cheeseburgers, right? So the way it's read is chalav imo, sorry, and therefore you cannot cook meat with milk. Says the Gemara, we have a few more minutes. What about one more example, which is the very famous pasuk of that when 3 times in a year, shlosh pamim b'shana, you're at kol zechorcha, right? You have to go and see God in the Beit HaMikdash, basically. So what about that case? Because remember that we've darshan this many times before. Very interesting. It says yir'eh, which means you see God, or see the Shekhinah, or see the Beit HaMikdash, and it says you can read it yira'eh, which is how we read it, right? Shalosh pamim b'shana yira'eh kol zechorcha, which means you will be seen. Who are you seen by? The Beit HaMikdash, by the Shekhinah, not the Beit HaMikdash, by the Shekhinah, by God, right? So 3 times a year you should be present to be seen in Yerushalayim, right? So we've darshan the following: Hare yira'ah yira'eh, which is the same reading, the same writing, meaning whether you pronounce it yir'eh or you pronounce it yira'eh, yir'eh again means you see, yir'eh means you are seen, it's the same thing. So according to what we just said in the Gemara, everyone agrees that the way you darshan it is the way you read it, which is shalosh pamim b'shana yira'eh kol zechorcha. Everyone should be seen by Hashem in Beit HaMikdash, but that's not true. Well, how do I know it's not true? We'll read inside. That is the way they're the same. Upliga, and we disagree about it, Tanya, because we have a brayta that says that a blind person, a suma, a person who's blind in one eye. Remember, a person who's blind in 2 eyes is generally patur from all mitzvot because they're not considered to be able to do things, right? Now that might be different, of course, nowadays. But says Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, even if you're blind in one eye, so you can see perfectly well, right? Even if you're blind in one eye, you can see perfectly well, you are patur from Re'iyah. Why are you patur
Not
from
perfectly.
Sorry?
Not perfectly well.
Okay, I'll grant you that. You're not perfectly well, but you can see things, okay? You're correct. But you're patur from Re'iyah. Now, if Re'iyah is to go to the Beit HaMikdash so that God can see you, who cares if you can see, right? Says Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, Shenemar, because the pasuk says Yir'eh, and we read it Yira'eh. So we actually darshan both. Kederech sheba lirot, the same way you expect to be seen, you have to be able to see. Kach lirot, ma lirot b'shteinav. Just like just like a person is seen with 2 eyes, meaning God. So again, it's a little weird to say it, that God sees you with 2 eyes, which is meaning God sees you perfectly, so which is considered to be 2 eyes. Af lirot b'shteinav, so you have to be seen with 2 eyes, meaning if you only have 1 eye, you're patur from this mitzvah. So here's a case where the way we read it is one thing, the way it's written is ambiguous. It could be either one, and there's an opinion, at least one opinion from Yehuda ben Tema, that we care about the way it's written, just like we care about the way it's read. Ella Amar. So now the final question of today is according to Yehuda ben Tema, can you eat milk and meat? Right? Because maybe when it says chalav, it should be chalev. So all it's saying is lo tavashel gedi. Don't put the chalev. Don't add any extra lard. Lard is probably the wrong word, right? Any extra fat or congealed fat. That's what it is on the meat. Ella Amar Ravacha Breder of Ika Amar. You know how we know that you can't have milk and meat? It says lo tivashel. It says don't cook. The only way to cook is with something that's liquid, right? Derech bishul asrat Torah. So cooking is with something liquid. You can cook things in milk, right? If you were allowed to, but you can't cook things in butter but in congealed fat, right? You can roast things, you can fry things. I think tigun means fry, right?
Just cook.
You can cook means liquid. Cook always means putting something in liquid, right?
Boiling it?
Yeah, like boiling,
So
exactly.
Right,
Like we say by carbon pesach, like tuvashel, right? You can't eat it in boiled, but you can. You wouldn't use the word bishul to describe cooking something and adding fat on top of it. You would say that's what we call frying usually, right? Or it could be roasting, but frying in general if you put it in a pan. And so therefore, the way we know it's referring to milk and not to fat is based on the word bishul, not based on the way you read the word chelef. And it turns out that there is an opinion, might be a minority opinion, that even if something is read a certain way, we give weight to the way it's written, even if the way it's written is ambiguous, it can be read two ways. So we're going to stop there. It's a really good close of this, I would say, tangential sugya. And tomorrow we will get back on the last line to our actual sugya about how many people you need to do judgment. I want to say two things. First of all, tomorrow's a really exciting daf, so I'll encourage everyone to participate. Every daf's exciting, but it's a really fun one. And second of all, it would be much better for me to learn in the evening tomorrow. So can we do that? Because I have to go to TNEC in the morning. So, and Rosa can only join us in the evening. So let's do the evening. So what time is least inconvenient for those who
The
don't wanna-
later the better for me.
So what does that mean though? Later could to mean a lot of things.
I'd do
7:30?
9:30 if you wanted to.
That's probably too late for me to be that.
For me, it'd be better 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Can we do 8 o'clock? Anyone?
I can do 8.
I just can't guarantee that.
Okay, let's try
It's-
8 o'clock.
It's very,
And-
the evenings are difficult.
I'm sorry that they are, but let's try 8 o'clock.
Okay,
don't know.
I'll catch up on a recording. I will not be able to do it.
Okay, we'll miss you, Robert, but we're gonna do 8 o'clock tomorrow. The other news I have, which is not as good news, which is that God willing, good news. I'm going to Israel on Monday, so I will be away next Shabbat, and I don't think I'll be able to do it in person live. So I'm probably gonna record the dafim ahead of time, or maybe I'll do it from Israel recorded. But I don't think it's certainly not Motzaei Shabbat. It's to be too late. I'm with my whole family.
There's
We're all
so
going.
much going on Motzaei Shabbat, it's crazy. There are like 4
Yeah,
events to buy it Motzaei Shabbat next
Yeah,
week.
it's also Hanukkah.
It's
Yeah,
also Hanukkah, right? So God willing, we will not learn in person next week, but we will. I'm going to try to do a recording very, very much, and then God willing, I'll be home the next week, and we'll do it regular.
have a safe trip
Well-
to Israel.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
what do we say about Nefesh in this argument? Nefashot?
What? Sorry, ask the question again. Oh, according.
How do they reread the argument about Nefashot?
Yeah, so the Torah says, "I'll call nafshot mate," right? On all, so
Right.
the Rabbanan's argument is that you're just speaking about not many bodies leading to one group of blood, but many times it happening. Meaning, don't do it many. It's like general, like you would say, right? Don't crash into cars, right? It doesn't mean don't crash into many cars. It means never crash into cars, kind of thing.
I've
then we
had
also-
4
Okay.
cars totaled on me.
We often, we often use plural in that way to say don't do it, but it's not saying don't do it to many of them.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay,
Well, what
Shavua
is
Tov,
the,
everyone.
then one quickly, what is the darshan about kiper with Hillel? Is he holding Yesh Aim Lemikra then, or Yesh Aim Masoret then?
So it's not clear. He doesn't have to hold either one, just to be clear. He's saying no matter what you start with, meaning whether you start with 4 or 3 or whatever it might be, the Torah says put it on 4 corners, right? Says Beit Hillel, because it says the word kiper 3 times, it can subtract from your 4 corners down to 1. So it's not based on chronot, basically. We're taking away that drasha, which is what we said on Amud Aleph, where we learn out from how many corners. We're actually learning this because you would have compared the chatat outside, which is the regular chatat, from the chatat inside, where every step is ma'akiv. Every step is required. So you would have had a comparison, really essentially a gzeir shava from one, not gzeir shava, hekesh from one to the other, and therefore the kippur tells you don't need each one. Each kippur subtracts 1 required, and at the end of the day, you're left with only 1.
But how does that stem with what Beit Shammai said though? We just disregarding that? Beit Shammai said you need 2. 2 is ma'akev.
Right. So Beit Shammai learned it from a different version. He learned it from Chronot, which tells you.
Well, we
that-
usually disregard Beit Shammai.
Right. No. But I agree. Beit Shammai learned it from a different source. So he did not
Yeah.
seem to learn it from the same place. He learned it from corners, remember, Chronot.
So I mean, but how do we reconcile the opinion of Beit Shammai here?
We never
Shammai
bother to
disagrees.
reconcile the opinion of Beit Shammai.
Yeah, no, I'd say
Shammai
Beit Shammai
just rejected.
disagrees with this Breita, which he can.
Oh, so this is a different source then.
Right. This is
Yeah.
a Beit Hillel source. Okay. I'll see. I hope whoever can make it tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, God willing.
All right,
Shavua
8 o'clock tomorrow night. Thank you. Yasher
Thank you. Shavua Tov.
Tov.